This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chapter 12, Heartache, of Good Wives by Louisa May Alcott. Whatever his motive might have been, Lowell studied to some purpose that year, for he graduated with honor, and gave the Latin oration with the grace of a Phillips and the eloquence of a Demosthenes. So his friends said, they were all there, his grandfather, oh so proud, Mr. and Miss March, John, Meg, Joe, and Beth, and all exulted over him with the sincere admiration which boys make light of at the time, but fail to win from the world by any after triumphs. I've got to stay for this confounded supper, but I shall be home early tomorrow. You'll come and meet us as usual, girls, Lorry said, as he put the sisters into the carriage after the joys of the day were over. He said girls, but meant Joe, for she was the only one who kept up the old custom. She had not had the heart to refuse her splendid, successful boy anything, and answered warmly, I'll come, Teddy, rain or shine, and march before you, playing Hail, the conquering hero comes, on a Jew's harp. Lorry thanked her with a look that made her think in a sudden panic, oh, dearie me, I know he'll say something, and then what shall I do? Evening meditation and morning walk somewhat allayed her fears, and having decided that she wouldn't be vain enough to think people were going to propose when she had given them every reason to know what her answer would be, she set forth at the appointed time, hoping Teddy wouldn't do anything to make her hurt his poor little feelings. A call at Meg's and a refreshing sniff and sip at the Daisy and Demijohn still further fortified her for the tete-a-tete. But when she saw a stalwart figure looming in the distance, she had a strong desire to turn about and run away. "Where's the Jew's harp, Joe?" cried Lorry, as soon as he was within speaking distance. "I forgot it," and Joe took heart again, for the salutation could not be called lover-like. She always used to take his arm on these occasions. Now she did not, and he made no complaint, which was a bad sign, but talked on rapidly about all sorts of fairway subjects, till they turned from the road into the little path that led homeward through the grove. Then he walked more slowly, suddenly lost his fine flow of language, and now and then a dreadful pause occurred. To rescue the conversation from one of the wells of silence into which it kept falling, Joe said hastily, "Now you must have a good long holiday." "I intend to." Something in his resolute tone made Joe look up quickly, to find him looking down at her with an expression that assured her the dreaded moment had come, and made her put out her hand with an imploring, "No, Teddy, please don't." "I will, and you must hear me. It's no use, Joe. We've got to have it out, and the sooner the better for both of us," he answered, getting flushed and excited all at once. "Say what you like, then I'll listen," said Joe, with a desperate sort of patience. Lorry was a young lover, but he was in earnest and meant to have it out, if he died in the attempt, so he plunged into the subject with characteristic impetuosity, saying in a voice that would get choky now and then, in spite of manual efforts to keep it steady, "I've loved you ever since I've known you, Joe. Couldn't help it. You've been so good to me. I've tried to show it, but you wouldn't let me. Now I'm going to make you hear, and give me an answer, for I can't go so any longer." "I wanted to save you this. I thought you'd understand," began Joe, finding it a great deal harder than she expected. "I know you did, but girls are so queer, and you never know what they mean. They say no when they mean yes, and drive a man out of his mind, just for the fun of it," returned Lorry, entrenching himself behind an undeniable fact. "I don't. I never wanted to make you care for me so, and I want always to keep you from it if I could." "I thought so. It was like you, but it was no use. I only loved you all the more, and I worked hard to please you, and I gave up billiards and everything you didn't like, and waited and never complained, for I'd hoped you'd love me, though I'm not half good enough." Here there was a choke that couldn't be controlled, so he decapitated Buttercups while he cleared this confounded throat. You are a great deal too good for me, and I'm so grateful to you, and so proud and fond of you. I don't see why I can't love you as you want me to. I've tried, but I can't change the feeling, and it would be a lie to say I do when I don't. Really, truly, Joe." He stopped short and caught both her hands as he put his question with a look that she did not soon forget. "Really, truly, dear." They were in the grove now, close by the stile, and when the last words fell reluctantly from Joe's lips, Lorry dropped her hands and turned as if to go on. But for once in his life that fence was too much for him, so he just laid his head down on the mossy post and stood so still that Joe was frightened. "Oh, Teddy, I'm so sorry, so desperately sorry. I could kill myself if it would do any good. I wish you wouldn't take it so hard. I can't help it. You know it's impossible for people to make themselves love people they don't," cried Joe, negligent but remorsefully, as she softly patted his shoulder, remembering the time when he had comforted her so long ago. "They do sometimes," said a muffled voice from the post. "I don't believe it's the right sort of love, and I'd rather not try it," was the decided answer. There was a long pause, while the blackbird sung blithely on the willow by the river, and the tall grass rustled in the wind. Presently Joe said very soberly, as she sat down on the steps of the stile, "Lorry, I want to tell you something." He started as if he had been shot, threw up his head, and cried out in a fierce tone, "Don't tell me that, Joe. I can't bear it now." "Tell what?" she asked, wondering in his violence. "That you love that old man." "What old man?" demanded Joe, thinking he must mean his grandfather. "That devilish professor you were always writing about. If you say you love him, I know I shall do something desperate." And he looked as if he would keep his word, as he clenched his hands with a wrathful spark in his eye. Joe wanted to laugh, but restrained herself and said warmly, for she too was getting excited with all this, "Don't swear, Teddy. He isn't old, nor anything bad, but good and kind, and the best friend I've got next to you. Pray, don't fly into a passion. I want to be kind, but I know I shall get angry if you bruise my professor. I haven't the least idea of loving him or anybody else." "But you will after a while, and then what will become of me?" "You'll love somebody else too, like a sensible boy, and forget all this trouble." "I can't love anyone else, and I'll never forget you, Joe, never, never," with a stamp to emphasize his passionate words. "What shall I do with him?" sighed Joe, finding the emotions were more unmanageable than she expected. "You haven't heard what I wanted to tell you. Sit down and listen, for indeed I want to do right and make you happy," she said, hoping to soothe him with a little reason, which proved that she knew nothing about love. Seeing a ray of hope in that last speech, Lorry threw himself down on the grass at her feet, leaned his arm on the lower step of the stile, and looked at her with an expectant face. Now that arrangement was not conducive to calm speech or clear thought on Joe's part, for how could she say hard things to her boy, while he watched her with eyes full of love and longing, and lashes still wet with the bitter drop or two of her hardness of heart had wrung from him? She gently turned his head away, saying as she stroked the wavy hair which had been allowed to grow for her sake, "How touching that was, to be sure! I agree with mother that you and I are not suited to each other, because our quick tempers and strong wills would probably make us very miserable. If we were so foolish as to—" Joe paused a little over the last word, but Lorry uttered it with a rapturous expression. "Mary! No, we shouldn't. If you loved me, Joe, I should be a perfect saint, for you could make me anything you like." "No, I can't. I've tried it and failed, and I won't risk our happiness by such a serious experiment. We don't agree, and we never shall. So we'll be good friends all our life, but we won't go and do anything rash." "Yes, we will, if we get the chance," muttered Lorry rebelliously. "Now, do be reasonable and take a sensible view of the case," implored Joel, almost at her wits' end. "I won't be reasonable. I don't want to take what you call a sensible view. It won't help me, and it only makes you harder. I don't believe you have any heart." "I wish I hadn't." There was a little quiver in Joe's voice, and, thinking it a good omen, Lorry turned around, bringing all his persuasive powers to bear as he said, in the winsome tone that had never been so dangerously wieldsome before, "Don't disappoint us, dear. Everyone expects it. Grandpa has set his heart upon it. Your people like it, and I can't get on without you. Say you will, and let us be happy. Do, do." Not until months afterward did Joe understand how she had the strength of mind to hold fast to the resolution she had made when she decided that she did not love her boy and never could. It was very hard to do, but she did it, knowing that delay was both useless and cruel. "I can't say yes truly, so I won't say it at all. You'll see that I'm right by and by, and thank me for it," she began solemnly. "I'll be hanged if I do!" and Lorry bounced off the grouse, burning with indignation at the bare idea. "Yes, you will," persisted Joe. "You'll get over this after a while, and find some lovely, accomplished girl who will adore you, and make a fine mistress for your fine house. I shouldn't. I'm homely and awkward and odd and old, and you'd be ashamed of me, and we should quarrel. We can't help it, even now, you see, and I shouldn't like elegant society, and you would."